Did you know Los Santos has an entire metro rail system called the Arrow? You very well might have, but we spent some time recently looking at the public transportation in Fallout. That was an experience. It also made me want to look at a similar system in a place where the world isn't destroyed. Unlike the monorail in Fallout, the Arrow is actually usable. You, me, Gangster Grandma, we can all get on and ride along. Does this mean it's going to make sense? We got my man Bill here. He's our barely informed local life form. He's much more than that, but he's also just been fired from his corporate job as an accountant. Bill's got bills to pay and dogs to feed, so he reached out to me for some work, because I clearly know about employment. I've arranged an interview for him with a reputable and well-respected company called Ballas Inc. Bill doesn't have a car, and I'm sure as hell not going to buy this guy a taxi, so we are going to use public transportation in America. Wish us luck. Now, aside from getting Bill a job, our goal is to figure out if the Arrow is a reasonable way to get around Los Santos. How realistic is it, and what is it like to actually use as a civilian? And just so you know, this thing is based on the real-life Los Angeles Metro Rail. Bill just crash-landed in Los Santos International Airport and needs to be at his interview with the Ballas by 10 a.m. It's just after 6 a.m. now, so this really shouldn't be an issue. We have 4 hours to get from here to here. What could go wrong? Bill made his way down to the underground station at Terminal 4. Now, as a barely informed local life form, he didn't know what he was doing. He burst through the turnstiles without paying. No one really seemed to care, neither did he. He didn't want to miss a train, so he skipped the stairs. Everything was going well so far. But this is where it starts to take a turn for the worse. Literally. We waited a while, and we waited some more. It was already after 7 a.m., so we hopped on the first train that showed up, no questions asked. 3 passengers then stood up, dropped their coffees, and gracefully exited the train. Not everyone gets off though, and Gangster Grandma gets on. Keep that in mind. Do not forget Gangster Grandma. After what felt like forever, the train finally departs at 7:24 a.m. Bill's starting to get a little nervous about making it to the interview on time, wants to make a good first impression, but at least we're moving. We make it to our next stop just after 8 a.m., arriving at Terminal 4. We've now just spent 2 hours traveling to get to the same place we started. What is going on here? What just happened? Okay, look at this map of the metro. Notice the loop. That is what happened. The train entered the station and stopped to let people off, except many people stayed on, and one person even got on, not including us. It then goes through this loop and stops once again. This is not right, no good. You might say, look at the map provided at the station, don't get on when it's about to pass through the loop, you idiot. It's not very nice. Fair enough though, except not really. This is public transportation, not an IQ test. People are going to be showing up here after taking a red-eye flight like Bill, and they don't need to have their awareness or patience tested like this. There's no reason not to get on the train here either. You're just getting on to get a seat earlier. What doesn't really make sense is not getting off at the train here, because this is the last station in this direction. This setup would be horrendous for a couple of reasons. People, like Bill, will accidentally get on just to stop once more at the same station, thinking they were going to a new place. It's not like he shouldn't get on. Again, the alternative is to just wait for the train to loop around and get on at its second stop. The issue is really a matter of expectation. If you get on expecting to go to the next station, but end up back where you started, that's confusing. People are bound to be going through the motions and get off of the train thinking they've just arrived at their destination. Then, as the train's pulling away, they realize they just got off early, and now they're stuck waiting for another train to come through, stop twice again, and then finally leave. This is also going to waste a ton of time keeping the train held up at a single station. Here's another thing. We're at an airport in a big city. This train could easily reach full capacity at the first stop, loop around and stop again, where another set of wannabe passengers are hoping to get on, but now there's no room. It's just a metal box full of angry, confused, and canned sardines staring out the window at them. Some stations list the upcoming destination of the train. This one does not, conveniently trying to ignore the issue like it's an unwanted stepchild. The only line on the LA Metro that somewhat resembles this is the A line, but notice there are 4 stops within that loop. It's not just for turning around. On the actual LA Metro system, we might see something like this. The train pulls into the last station on one side of the central platform. Oftentimes, passengers are going to be told, "This is the final stop. You may now exit," and everyone does that. They get off, hopefully. Then the train continues forward past the station into what's called a tail track. It's a short, dead-end section beyond the platform. The operator then gets up, walks to the cab on the other end of the train, now facing the opposite direction, and sends the train back towards the station. However, before re-entering the platform, the train uses what's called a crossover to switch onto the opposite track. It then arrives again on the other side of the island platform to begin its outbound trip. This isn't the only way for a metro train to turn around, but it's common on the LA Metro. What's kind of crazy is the Los Santos metro trains have cabins on both ends, but the conductor never leaves the one he is in. So it's possible at some point this was meant to function as I just described, but ended up not making the cut. Or the conductors are just lazy, but they could theoretically get up, go to the other side, and all of this could take place if the infrastructure within the game was set up to do so. Big problem with these loops. They are way too long. If you stretched them out, they would be nearly as long as the distances between 2 different stations. Even worse than the airport loop is this one at Davis. Look at all of the track being used to just turn a train around. I rode from Davis to test this out. It took over an hour and a half in game time. Again, you spend more time waiting for the train to turn around than you'd spend in between most stations while riding the thing. Completely busted. These loops make the passenger experience confusing, they make the system less efficient, and they make US public transportation look good. After the train stops at the airport terminal again, I saw Steve from Blue's Clues get off the train, walk away from the stairs closest to him, and go to the other side of the platform. I guess he enjoys taking the loop. Finally, by 8:55, we arrive at the airport parking station where people who are more fortunate than us can head up and get their cars. I'm starting to understand the desire to theft grand autos at this point. We do our best to abide the law, so we're stuck on this thing. By 9:13, we finally leave the airport. It only took us over 3 hours. Bill now has 47 minutes to get to his interview on time. He couldn't go back to accounting though. He was fed up. He had bigger dreams. Dreams of being a baller. Those dreams fall apart 47 minutes later on our way to Puerto del Sol, still 8 stops away from our destination. Bill was desperate though, and I had a train to look at, so we carried on. We finally arrive in Puerto del Sol at 10:25 a.m. Now, let's look at something here. That something being these donkeys at a train station. The train arrives, and they're on the side of the platform where people would be waiting to get on this train, but they don't. They don't get on. Unless every single one of them is waiting for someone from the airport to get off here, there's no reason not to get on this train. That's not true. There's a lot of reasons not to get on this train. But what are these people doing? Are we just hanging out at a metro station? Is that what you kids do now? Is that what you're doing? The arrow only goes in 2 directions and has no distinct lines. The real LA Metro has 6 different rail lines. A, B, C, D, and what comes after E? K. Then you have various transfer stations to switch between those lines. The Los Santos arrow doesn't bother with all this sensible nonsense. It's just one big loop-de-loop. Now, who can guess the big issue with that? It explains our current problem. We want to get to Davis from the airport. To get there, we have to go through every single station the arrow stops at first. It's like you want to go to GameStop, but your mom takes you to Kohl's, Macy's, JCPenney's, Target, TJ Maxx, Walmart, Home Goods, Home Depot, and Lowe's. By the time you get to GameStop, you're 37 years old with 3 kids, a mortgage, and a pending divorce. Now, on the arrow, we only have 11 stations in total, and one of those is currently out of service. So there's really only 10 unique stops. The real LA Metro Rail has over 100 stations. Still, the issue in practice remains because the Los Santos area is pretty much a scaled down Los Angeles, but the arrow covers an enormous amount of distance relative to that space. That distance, combined with time moving 30 times faster than in real life, leads to, our insane travel times. By the end of this, we'll see just how long it takes to get from one end of the arrow to the other. To the arrow's benefit, this actually mimics the A, E, and K lines from the LA Metro quite well. Those lines are a mix of at grade, where the tracks intersect with roads and other pathways not relevant to the train. You also have exclusive corridor, where the rail is at ground level but fully separated from cars and pedestrians, so it has its own space to roll along. You also have street running, where the rail shares lane space with cars, elevated with railway on bridges and platforms above the ground, and of course, underground, in tunnels, under the ground. You also have lines within the LA Metro that are entirely rapid transit subways, but we also have lines that mimic what they decided to implement in Los Santos, which doesn't have those exclusively rapid transit subways. Still a good job. Another slight issue with this station is that we have 2 platforms. You'll see people waiting over here on the benches, but the problem is the train doors only open on the side of the central platform. We might have Gangster Granny over here just trying to have a sit while waiting for the train. She'd get up and have to hobble across the rails and up to the platform, hopefully before the train leaves her or hits her on the way across the rails. We finally arrive in Strawberry and say goodbye to Gangster Grandma. Say goodbye, Gangster Grandma. Of course she lives here, because Strawberry is a sweet, sweet little lie of a station. On the lower platform, we have a sign denoting this station as being part of the Green Line. Whoever put this here must have been smoking some of that Green Line, because, as we discussed, there are no lines within the arrow system. It's one line. Why would you need to distinguish stations by color? They're all on the same line. Anyway, on the bright side, we can see some great attention to detail here, as the Strawberry Station is clearly inspired by the design of the Willowbrook Rosa Parks Station from the real LA Metro. We also have some signs that tell you which station is up next, depending on which side of the platform you're on. On the downside, the trains often don't stop where the collections of people are standing. So either the conductors are just assholes, or the people of Los Santos aren't too bright. ¿Por qué no los dos? Our next stop after Strawberry is Burton, which also happens to be the longest gap between stations, given Pillbox North is closed and under construction. This gives us some more time to look at the train. They're based on the Siemens P2000 light rail vehicles that can be seen on the actual LA Metro rail. You gotta love this. They're correctly using these overhead catenary lines to supply electric power to the vehicles. The trains have this little thing on top of them. It's called a pantograph that they use to find ghosts. They also maintain contact with the wire, allowing them to collect electricity from the wires and feed it to the trains. This allows us to slowly move across Los Santos. Big plus for safety, because the system is suspended above the train, making it more difficult for someone to be electrocuted. Not impossible if you're willing to put in some effort. Don't let people hold you back and keep you from your dreams. Be like Bill, be a balla. We do see a decent amount of sparking on the Los Santos catenary setup, which isn't unheard of in real life, but at the rate and look of it here, likely indicates poor maintenance, which very well could be intentional. Now, if you thought I was being nitpicky and ridiculous up to this point, wait until this next gripe. A major failure of the Arrow that I will not let go is its lacking interior. With only 16 benches that fit 2 lean individuals comfortably at most, we're getting 32 people on here with very limited standing options. You only have 16 vertical poles, but no overhead horizontal rails to hold on to, which explains why you won't see people standing on the Arrow. An actual Siemens P2000 can get at least 100 fat butts on a single car. Moving on. We arrive in Burton just before 2 p.m., doing great on time. This station and the one at Little Seoul have exteriors that resemble the Hollywood Vine station in LA. No surprise the devs at Rockstar did their homework. Stations like Burton and Portola Drive also have unique murals, elevators that don't go up or down, ticket and information stations that don't provide tickets or much in the way of information, phone booths that most of you probably couldn't figure out how to use at this point, and signage displaying rules that people don't follow. This all strongly resembles the real-life LA Metro stations. We also have these monitors displaying timetables that make no sense. Like we can see this one right here that shows a list of times to 2 stations at the airport and Davis. This is likely showing the time expectations for trains to reach each end of the Arrow's loop. But those times they have listed, get out of here with those. That's a lie. Those are lies, no chance. You'll be waiting at a single stop longer than those times. There's no real time tracking for the trains of the Arrow. Another thing, there also aren't that many trains running at once. They seem to spawn in every so often, but if you run along the rails like the Flash, there isn't anything approximating the quantity displayed on those tables. We don't have a set number of trains moving along the tracks at all times. They're more like the cars of the world. They spawn in every so often where it's relevant to the player. Alright, so get this. I even found an instance where a train came into Davis, went into one of those loops, stopped at Davis again, and left. Then I waited for another train. But the next one that appeared came out of the loop. No train ever entered the loop, but one came out. There are trains being born in these loops. Do you understand how illegal that is? Bill was starting to lose his mind. While en route to Pillbox South, he realized it's now been 12 hours since he got off his plane. Nearly 12 hours of riding this damn thing, and we still weren't in Davis. It wasn't even the next stop. Not to mention, we had to get from the Davis station over to Grove Street for the interview. By the time we arrived in Pillbox South at 6:22 p.m., Bill stepped off the train. I asked him, I said, "Where you going, pal?" But he didn't respond. He just went postal. Mayhem ensued, and before I knew it, the police were after Bill. Or perhaps Bill was after the police. It was a goddamn war zone. Bullets whizzing by, bodies hitting the floor, helicopters crashing, explosions all over, and then suddenly, it was over. Just like that. All Bill had to do was hop back on the train, and we were in the clear for some reason. You see, what I found out is the light rail of Los Santos is technically an independent, sovereign nation, where neither Los Santos, San Andreas, nor the United States law applied. The police were forced to stand down and let us ride. Even if Bill allegedly were to kill the conductor, the train would continue. Sure, it might blow past a couple of stations, leave some people in the dust, but eventually the automatic system control would turn on and the train would resume as normal, even if the conductor was still sitting in the cabin, dead. And there actually is automatic train operation tech in the Simons P2000, so this is accurate. It's not used, but it can be used, and we've just proven that it works in Los Santos. You're welcome. After all of our trials and tribulations of riding the Arrow, we finally arrived in Davis at 7:37 p.m. Remember, our journey started at 6 a.m., but we didn't get on the train until 7:07 a.m. in fairness, so it only took us exactly 12 and a half hours from end to end on the Arrow. What a great public service. The ticket machine at Davis offers us a hint as to what exactly is going on here. Look, we apologize for the inconvenience, but this machine will never work. It all makes sense now. Just like the machine, the system isn't meant to work. It's meant to look like it works. Most of the text on these information boards is written in Latin. Fitting. Given the amount of time you'd spend on the Arrow, chances are you'd die here. So why not leave info in a dead language? We have panels here that are meant to display travel connections, but there are no distinct lines. You're not connecting to anything. You'll live by the Arrow and die by the Arrow. Take an arrow to the knee. Watch the Arrow while you pee. And if you see Bill on the Arrow, you know it's time to flee. That's a poem by me. I think I can hear the tears falling of all those who had to ride this thing going on outside. They're coming down from the heavens. But they even have games for you to play while you wait. Here's 2 truths and a lie. Watch out for your stop. We go deep into the ghetto. Stay away from the edge. I saw a guy get minced once. Metro tickets make getting around the city cheap and easy. So we know it took us over 12 hours to get from the airport to Davis riding the Arrow, but what if we just drove there? Well, it would take about an hour and a half, even while roughly following traffic laws and surviving the abundance of psychos driving in this city. It's not even close, and this can absolutely be the case in real life, depending on where you're trying to go. 12 hours is still insane, but the Metro Rail is not always faster. Let's take a step back for a second. There's an entire Metro Rail system in a game that is deeply inefficient and ineffective. I mean the rail system, not the game. I know there's going to be one goofball out there who's like, this is the only way I get around in Grand Theft Auto, but most of us don't use it to travel throughout the map, especially in single player where you can't even skip the ride, which I respect. The point of the system goes well beyond player use. If you told your grandma you were watching a video about Grand Theft Auto, I'm sure she'd expect shooting, police chases, and all sorts of violence and sex. Imagine you explain to her that there's a metro system with an immense amount of detail that largely attempts to mimic the real-life infrastructure, and despite my critiques, does a very good job at that. She's still gonna think you're odd and need to go outside, maybe more so. Whatever, Jimmy, just go shoot some people and bang a hooer. That's okay, we can keep the train stuff between us. The arrow is an aspect of the game made to mimic the feel of Los Angeles, or even more broadly, the feel of being in a real city. Cities have a wide array of aspects and functions that only a percentage of people are going to use. When I was just a young ranger with no co, I used to ride the bus with my great-grandmother on a weekly basis. Now it's been years since I've seen the inside of a bus. I've met people who have never used a city bus system before. It still exists. I could go ride a bus right now. I'm not going to, but I could. Same with the subway. If a game is going to effectively, maybe not necessarily accurately or completely accurately, but effectively mimic a city, it has to incorporate things like this. Even if the devs know damn well that in Grand Theft Auto, most people, the vast majority of them even, aren't going to use the metro, and a certain percentage of them might never use the metro. They might not even know it's there. It still has to be there to pull off what they're trying to achieve. Bill finally made it to Grove Street. He didn't even bother looking at the time. He was expecting to get laughed out of the interview at this point, but before he could explain why he was so late and rant about how terrible the public transit was here, the Ballas asked him to take over their entire operation. We were both shocked by this, completely confused. Nothing about today was normal, though. The Ballas explained that they heard what Bill had been up to, causing havoc for the LSPD, acting as a one-man army, dropping helicopters, riding on the back of the Arrow like it was his chariot of war, and helping gangster grandma move her drugs across the city. Bill had become an overnight legend in the streets. Not even overnight. He became a legend in under a night. And off they went to do cool stuff. Now here I am, alone, standing in the middle of Grove Street. It's almost midnight.